and welcome back. In today's video, we will be discussing the numbers 0 and 1, their interplay, and the breakdown of a mathematical equation into the elements.
Right. So, practical applications. Essentially, what is an equation in practical reality is essentially what we're looking for. We've talked a little bit before where we have taken the elements, given them essentially keywords for one-dimensional reality, fire being heat, air being agility, water being grossness that without overreaching its bounds, earth being firmness. Okay. One-dimensional reality, as we've talked a little before, it's just a measurement of itself, essentially. It's one thing, and that's all it can be in one-dimensional reality. We've talked about that before. Because it is one thing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're each a different thing, a different pole, so to speak, whatever you want to call it. Or unit, let's call it a unit, not a pole, a unit, a particular unit. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, in order to understand that, what did we had to we had to give it new definitions for three-dimensional reality. Okay. So, fire became motion, which heat is motion.
Yes, yep.
Okay. Agility became velocity. Grossness without overstepping its bounds became density. Firmness became durability. Okay. Those are all terms that we can now work with because they make much more sense in a practical manner than, velocity does than agility. You know,
Right.
It's too broad a concept to bring it down into something practical.
Absolutely.
So once we do that, okay, what we need to start doing now is figuring out how those four elements create a mathematical equation. Because a mathematical equation essentially is the foundation of everything. It's the foundation of astrology, it's the foundation of anything engineered, anything created, any theories. Almost everything can be broken down into some sort of a mathematical equation when you get high enough in the math, correct?
Correct. And part of the reasoning for this is we know it has to be balanced between the four elements because these things do last.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense, yes. So let's break an equation down, okay? We know that 0 is what in an equation?
0 provides volume. It provides the basis for volume in three-dimensional reality.
Okay. By doing what? How does it do that? What does 0 do to do that, essentially? We know that 1, okay, measures mass, right?
Yep. One is the measurement, yeah.
Okay. So we know that 0, okay, when we're talking about 0, we're talking about 0 as like density, right? Is that what we're talking about? Water?
Water, we'd spoken previously and broken density into its mass and volume.
Right. It is mass and volume. There's interplay, but 0 in itself is going to be the volume aspect.
The volume aspect.
Okay?
Yes.
Because it gives you, it's essentially, it can be absence that takes up mass.
Right. It's
space.
the absence that takes up space. It's
Right.
Infinity in the finite.
Right.
In
So
the
it is
finite
grossness
engineer.
without going over its form.
Right.
Okay? Because it does inhabit an area. 3 dimensions, neutrons, but it does the same thing in any mathematical equation. It takes up space inside of an equation.
Yes.
Okay? Behind a number it means something, in front of a number it generally means nothing.
Right.
Okay? And it's not a number itself. But so that would be the volume aspect. Okay, volume being one part of water. Okay, mass being the next. Okay. So then when we go back to the two cycle powers that we get two-dimensionally,
Yes.
it would be what we would call 0 or volume proper to water.
Yes.
Okay, so if that's proper to water, okay, it's cold. It's the coldness because that's what's proper to water two-dimensionally in the power system. Okay, and then the second property of water is moist, okay, which is moving it into the next element.
Mhm.
So that would be mass.
Yes.
Okay. One, okay, when we talk about one is a way to measure mass, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is our way
Right.
to.
So if the second power is a means of transforming into the next element,
Mhm.
then one is that.
One, yeah,
It's
one
moving
that is.
water into air,
Yeah.
essentially, through moisture.
Mhm.
Okay? And that's allowing the mass to be measured, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
It's essentially creating mass and then taking mass into the next
Mhm.
form. Now, let's continue that cycle on into air. Okay?
All right.
So air,
Into air. Air is, we know, is interaction.
right,
So we look at how things interact within an equation. It's going to be the operations.
sure. Where water was sensitivity. So we're gonna go back to water just real quick,
Mhm.
because I think I skipped over something. Numbers, one and numbers. Okay, water in an equation.
Yes.
Zero and numbers and whole numbers. That's what water gives us in an equation. That's all I wanted to hit. So we move into the next part. Okay, the next part being air.
Air. Yes.
For the measurement of the mass that we now have in the forms of numbers. Okay, what part of the equation would air then be? Air then would be what?
Air.
Operation?
Air then translates
interact?
into the operations as it is how
So how the numbers
they,
are going to interact
how
with
they
each other,
interact.
correct?
Yeah.
So it's going to be addition, subtraction, multiplication, correct?
Yes.
And addition.
Yeah.
Okay, and that also includes fractions.
Yes.
It includes anything.
Yep.
Where water, that includes some fractions also, which makes perfect sense because zero is infinity and fractions are infinity and so are decimals. So, okay, so we go over and that's operations. Okay, so we're moving into operations. Okay, so measuring mass. Okay, and we're moving into air now, and that's going to be the moist as far as the power cycle goes.
Yes.
Because now we're moving into moist, hot.
Mhm.
Okay, so moist is going to be what's proper. Okay, so the operations are going to be what's proper to air.
Yes.
Okay. Anything we need to add on to that as far as the interaction between the two? Because it's also going to cover when you have to use parentheses and things and what order that comes
yes,
in.
the order of operations
Okay.
also does play
So we're
a
talking-
factor into that.
Essentially moving into direction,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
So direction, again being fire, direction, momentum. Okay. The means, we're talking about heat, hot.
Yes.
So hot is what's moving us from interaction, okay, into expression, essentially into fire. So when it does that, okay, what we're doing is we've just taken the operations and now we're giving those operations some sort of direction,
Mhm.
okay, and we're moving it into fire. So the direction aspect is what's going to change this into the fire.
Yes.
Element.
It flows. It changes into fire.
Right, and it
Um,
allows the equation to express, where we've interacted, okay, and the sensitivity essentially is going to be the whole numbers, okay, because they're just there, and zero. That's gonna be what you're getting, what you're feeling, how it's coming in. How they interact is going to be, again, the operations of the equation, okay? Then the direction that those are going, that's gonna be the start of the expression.
That's your expression. That's your
Right.
fire.
That's how it's going to.
Your final solution
Right. Your final solution is gonna give you what? Substance?
is going to grant you. Is going to give you the final substance of it.
Right, the substance of it, which we're gonna go, that's gonna go to earth.
Right back into.
Durability, right?
Yes.
So, let's follow that along like we did everything else, because we kinda jumped to substance on that one. So, let's take it from there. Heat, okay, we're getting direction, we're moving it into fire.
It's
Now we
fire.
need momentum,
yes.
push
Fire.
behind it,
fire,
what's
fire.
happening, okay?
Yeah.
Now, the momentum of the equation, okay,
Mhm.
is going to be, we've got the interaction, what the numbers are doing. The momentum is going to be whether, how, what it's going to equal, how it's going to complete, correct?
Yes.
And that's a how factor, how it's going to complete. Now, when we take that into Earth, okay, because Earth again is durability, which is strength and stamina, okay,
Mhm.
let's factor that in, okay. Now the momentum is doing what for us? Okay, the momentum. Okay,
So the
'cause we got the
momentum.
direction.
So the momentum essentially goes right into stamina.
Okay, it's going to give it
It
staying
gives
power.
it gives it staying power. It makes it concrete and durable and
Well, right, it's giving it.
it's stamina.
Okay, well, yeah, but again, it's giving us the ability for the equation to be sustained,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then moving us into the solution.
Yep.
Okay, so it's like the equal sign, or equals, and then the solution itself will be the strength of it.
Yes.
Okay, that will be the actual concrete boom. This is the answer.
Right.
Okay, so the answer is going to be
And that's
Strength,
the magnitude.
all
That's the
to durability,
Yeah.
and that's where you have your final answer to the equation, whatever that is going to be. And that's going to give you your substance, and that's your earth.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how durable that is going to depend on the rest of the functioning of that cycle. But that's essentially the cycle we're looking at.
Right.
For mathematics, and the
Mathematical.
mathematical equation.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. That is the mathematical breakdown, and that's why you can run an equation backwards.
right. Right.
Because the cycle is still unbroken.
Yes. Right. And you can run it backwards, but you can't do it backwards.
No. I'm not saying you can actually.
Right. No, I'm just for
Right.
them.
Right.
So to
Right.
speak. For you guys. No, but there we go, that's giving rise to how you actually can start building prayer, healing, manifestation work, any of those types of things. That's how you factor an equation into it and understand how everything is balanced out. And again, when we talked about astrology, it's the basics for astrology. Okay? It's giving us the degrees of the signs. It's giving us the angles, okay, of the aspects. Okay? It's giving us the substance of the energy. I mean, it's giving us all of the practical concepts that we need to build a chart. I mean, that's essentially how they did it
Right.
back in the day. They had to
Yeah.
break all of these down into that in
Mhm.
order to figure out how to create these blueprints. Okay, so essentially, it's giving confirmation to the science of astrology, and not
Right,
just
right.
behavior characteristics that people have, but in physics. Okay, through the eyes of a physics professor, they
Right.
can see it. You can see it as a scientist more so than I don't know what you would.
More so than
an astrology reader, an amateur
Right.
reader.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so again, that's what we want to get to, mainly because it allows you to see different things too. Okay, there are certain things that can happen, certain things that can't. If you're putting something together and your intention was for this to work with this thing and this thing and this thing through this particular object or that particular object with this energy, when you're done, you'll look at it and go, wait a minute, I wanted this and this, but I've got an angle that's working over here that's causing an aspect I don't want, or I have to
Right,
somehow factor that in to whatever I'm doing, or else it's going to give me a consequence I don't like.
It creates a fundamental basis for the law of unintended consequences,
Well,
essentially.
that, and it gives you a complete overall conceptual view of what you're doing.
Right.
I think is more where I'm going with it, so that though the unintended consequences that you're talking about, you can see them
Right.
before you do anything.
Right.
Most people don't do that. Most people look at these things as linear, like a domino, and that's the problem, because when you hit the first domino, anything behind it falls. And most of the time, you can't see the ones behind it.
Right.
And you didn't even
right.
know they were there.
Well,
In
and
this
the
regard,
energy
you'll
aspects
see it.
behind all of this, that when you see it linearly, you don't see the karma interplay
right.
that branches off.
Right, the karma interplay, or you don't see an interaction that you didn't count on that's going to cause your intention to not work
Right.
because of that particular. Again, let's talk about back to astrology, trines, easy energy. Okay, if you've created a prayer and you've created a trine between a planet and a certain energy, and another planet and certain energy, and you're like, I love that. But when you get everything else put together and you go, oops, I've got these trines I like, but all of a sudden now I've got squares over here and squares over here that are challenging the energy of the trines. You have to factor all of that in as well.
Right.
Okay, and that can make it more challenging. However, you're able to deal with it, as opposed to, hey, I got these trines and throwing it out there, and then all of a sudden, why did it work like this?
Right.
Yeah, that's where most people quit and give up on the spiritual aspects because they read a book, they lit a candle, it didn't work, and then they closed the book and they never opened it again.
Right.
Which is what some people do because they don't understand that there's a lot more involved than what they think there is. Okay, and working your power source, you have to figure out your power sources too, which are celestial. I mean, math is great, but there has to be a power source behind it.
Right.
Any engineer will tell you that. You can put all the wires together you want, no power source, nothing happens. So
Right, exactly.
Again, graceful celestial power sources are wonderful means of energy, but you also have to find the right power sources too. So, and again, you can use the planets and all those kind of things too, because we're talking about astrology. But again, these what we're talking about right here are the major building blocks of it.
Right.
Starting in one-dimensional reality, branching off into three. However, when you get into three dimensions, there's so much stuff going on that sometimes you have to go back to one to make sure that you and what you're doing remains what you intended and didn't go on and take on a life of its own after you got into here.
Right.
Okay, because you're spending too much time on details here and not enough time on your foundations.
Right.
Okay? And those are what give us the foundations
Well, and
to build anything on, to create anything.
And it becomes key for
Right.
creating a successful prayer or ritual or whatever.
Right, or just creating anything, success for your own life, or
Right.
helping and aid to someone else. Even fellowship, getting together in a church and going together and doing these things, or putting a ceremony together. This is what's going to determine whether or not you're balanced or not.
Right.
Okay, and if you're not, you can go back and go, where isn't it? Where did this mess up? And you'll be able to see it. I think that's one of the most beneficial things that's going to come out of this, is people will be able to go back at what they've done and go, well, maybe that's why this didn't happen, and start actually building the blueprint, in a blueprint that they can actually read
Right.
and follow. Almost like an engineer, so you'd be like an energy engineer is what we're doing here.
Right.
Almost, it's kind of weird, but
It's interesting, but yeah,
Needs to-
that's
yeah.
a good foundation to have.
yes,
Absolutely.
definitely. All right.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, and do remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.